Elle here, Vice President of Philanthropy for the Gettysburg Foundation, and I am joined by Chris Gwynn, Chief of Interpretation and Education for Gettysburg National Military Park. And while you are joining us today for a Museum Monday, we're here again on the battlefield to show how Gettysburg National Military Park and the museum galleries work in tandem to tell the full Gettysburg story. So Chris, where did you take us today?
Actually, do you know where we are, Elle?
I know the peace light. I'm not sure what this exact ground signifies.
Yeah, sure, you're right. So just out of the camera is the Eternal Light Peace Memorial. It's one of the most famous monuments in the battlefield. And we're actually on what's called Oak Hill. And if you'll notice, behind us is this beautiful sweeping panorama where we can see a lot of the first day's battlefield. In the distance, we have the town of Gettysburg, and from here we can see some of the modern buildings of Gettysburg College, but also the top of the courthouse, which is here during the time of the battle. In the distance, we see that tree line. That's actually Cemetery Hill. It's where the National Cemetery is. It's where Abraham Lincoln delivers the Gettysburg Address. So I love being up here because you can see so much of the battlefield. And every time I'm up here, I look across this landscape and I think, well, you know, what would this have looked like at the end of the day, July 1st, 1863, after the fighting had kind of swept through this part of the battlefield. And, you know, I think what we'd be looking at is a landscape that had really just been scarred by the combat that occurred that day. A landscape that had been destroyed in some sense. Crops have been destroyed, fences have been torn down. The dead and wounded would have littered the landscape. And all across the area, in the fields behind us, would have just been the debris that had been left behind by these two armies. Soldiers dumping their knapsacks, leaving their canteens, haversacks behind. Wounded men just struggling to free themselves. And what I'd like to do is go back to the Museum and Visitor Center and show you one artifact that was found in the valley just behind us that I think has a really powerful and poignant story to tell. So let's do it.
So Chris, on the field, you had us imagine the battlefield kind of strewn with debris and various items that from the soldiers who fought there. So I'm guessing that's what we're going to check out here now that we're in the museum?
Yeah, well, a lot of the items in this case were items that were recovered on the battlefield following the fighting. A lot of them recovered in the area we were talking about up on Oak Hill. We have the haversack that we talked about a few episodes ago, cartridge box, but I wanted to turn your attention to the upper corner there. There's a Bible, and it belonged to a guy named Private William Ventress, and he was in the 5th Alabama. He fights on July 1st, 1863, and we don't know a whole lot about him, right? We don't know a whole lot. We know he gets married in 1859. He enlists in 1861. He's obviously here at the Battle of Gettysburg, but we don't know if he survived the battle. We don't know if he survived the war. But he has this Bible with him, obviously, while he's on the battlefield. And in the front cover, he has this very poignant inscription. He writes, "If I should get killed in battle or sicken and die, my friends will please send this Bible and my remains home to my wife, to Mrs. W.E. Ventress, Clayton, Barber County, Alabama." And I think soldiers, Army life was very different than civilian life. In civilian life in mid-19th century America, there's this thing called the good death, where when you died at home, surrounded by loved ones. You made your peace with God. And the American Civil War just interrupts that. Now men are dying far away from home, in agony, in these unknown places. Their remains are never recovered. And so having a Bible like this with that kind of inscription, obviously that fate was on Ventress's mind. And we don't know what happened to him. Maybe he's still out in the battlefield. Maybe he's made it home. We really don't know. So if anybody knows the story of Ventress and wants to add to our knowledge, I hope you'll do it. But Elle, thanks again for inviting me to do another Museum Monday.
Catch you next week.
Next week. Thanks.